Whoa, Jake, jumping right into the Barbara Walters level questions.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
John, good to see you again, my friend. I
Hey.
genuinely love the movie, so thank you for taking the time.
Oh, thank you, man. Always good to see you. And you have the nicest fake background I've ever seen. So
That's real, baby. That's Chicago.
that can't be. No
That's
way.
Yep, come through, man. You and I can have a
That's
beer.
awesome. That's great.
I'm going to jump into
man.
this, and this might be a ridiculous comparison, but I'd imagine that a kid creating an imaginary character is kind of not unlike a writer or an actor creating a character. I'm sort of curious how often your own professional sort of imaginary characters that you've created follow you around in a sense, and are there triggers like in this movie that ever bring them back years later?
Whoa, Jake, jumping right into the Barbara Walters level questions. Listen, that's a really good question. I think you're absolutely right. I think the process of creating at all is something that I learned as a kid, and I think we're asked to sort of phase out of our lives because that's not who we are now as adults, and you got to take your life more seriously. And I think that this process has taught me to do the exact opposite, to create as much as you can, to get out this creative energy any way you can. And as far as creating characters for movies, it's absolutely the case. I mean, certainly the Quiet Place characters are very, very near and dear to my heart. And this movie is without a doubt the most personal movie I have done or ever will do. I made it for my kids. And so this movie had so much more riding on it for me personally because these characters and it's a big thing to jump into the world of genre when you had never done genre. It's way scarier to jump into the world of kids when you have kids because they're going to tell you whether you nailed it or not. And so my two kids are going to see the movie in 5 days. And I have never been more scared in my life to show this movie to, or any movie to anybody.
I can tell you they're going to love it. As a massive Calvin and Hobbes fan, I loved the tip of the cap in there.
Nice.
And I feel like this is as close as we'll ever get to a Calvin and Hobbes movie, man. So I appreciate you for doing
awesome. Thank you, Jake.
I had to stay after the credits to see who some of the ifs in the film were. And I guess obviously the list is pretty insane. George Clooney and Matt Damon. There's an amazing actress named Emily Blunt. Though I've got to say, I think you may have gotten the best Brad Pitt performance of his career, which is pretty astonishing. I am just sort of curious. I know you're friends with a lot of these guys, but what is that phone call like? Like, what is it when you decide I want George Clooney to play an if? Can you walk me through what that phone call is like?
Yeah, first of all, thank you. That's so nice. I think the big thing for me was, yes, I'm friendly with a lot of these people. I'm lucky enough to be friendly with these people. But I was genuinely very nervous because I knew exactly who I wanted in it, but they had no reason to say yes, nor did they have to. And they did yes partly as a favor, but actually with every movie, with Cillian Murphy on Quiet Place 2, I always call and discuss the film before they even read the script because it's important for me to frame the world and frame the idea before they sort of read through it. And on this one, I think that's the reason why most people said yes, is whether they had kids or not, they really loved the idea of bringing back imagination and how imagination is such an important part of everyone's life. And then the other thing was I got a lot of text back saying that at this time, it's just important to put good things out into the world. And so I think they were really happy to be a part of something that was just joyful and nothing but. So I think that's why most of them did it. I think I'll be paying them back for the rest of my life.
Worth it. Worth every favor you have to do, man. I'm going to cut you loose on this if you don't mind a nerdy question, because I got to tell you, speaking of the ifs, you reunited with Steve Carell was everything that I've always wanted. You know how much of a fan of The Office I am. And what I want to talk about is the fact that if I start going down a rabbit hole of The Office bloopers, particularly between you and Steve Carell, that's my afternoon. Like, that's where I will be for the next couple of hours of my life. I'm sort of curious, is there an Office blooper that if you come across online, it still gets you today the way it got you however many years ago?
Most of them get me the way they used to. And you're right, it's mostly the ones with Steve. I mean, they're all great. But bar none, the blooper that whenever it comes anywhere on my feed or whatever is when Steve's playing Santa. When he's playing Santa and Brian Baumgartner sits on his lap. And that was partly, the whole idea was written, but Steve's performance of like letting the oxygen out of his body and barely being able to speak and then rushing Brian through his gifts from Santa. So I think I've said this before, but of course the camera usually hit Jim to get his take on the whole thing. And I said to the cameraman in the middle of the take, I said, do not come to me because I will not be there. And sure enough, the camera went over to an empty space. I just wasn't there. I was in a corner crying, laughing.
It doesn't matter how many times I see that clip. It still gets me. They're pulling me out of here, John. I just want to tell you how much your work means to me, man. You've been kind to me for a very long time, and I want you to know I appreciate you. And I can't wait to get to see you in person, man.
I really appreciate that, man.
Take care. See you guys soon. Bye, guys.
You.
Thanks.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.